This guy, Carlos Alcaraz, in my opinion, is the most talented 2021-22 that I've ever seen on the tennis court. That's more than Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic.
Wimbledon is running right now, and Carlos Alcaraz is not in the draw. McEnroe breaking down on a podcast, Sinner cruising through week 1, the number 2 ranking under siege, a face from his Melbourne box photographed in London. One of those things is not a coincidence. Nobody in his camp will say where Carlos actually spends his days. The injury statement came in May, short and polite, and then the curtain dropped completely. A June collage of concerts and dinners surfaced while the biggest tournament of his career played on without him. Fans asked a simple question, and his team answered with silence, which usually means the truth costs something. McEnroe goes nuclear about the absence, calling it depressing on air, yet even he avoided the other rumor. The mystery woman walking around London has a name, a history with Carlos, and an alibi nobody bothered to check. Desperately trying to hide something is very different from having nothing to show. Tonight that gap gets examined properly with actual receipts. I genuinely want to know your first reaction, so drop it in the comments and hit the subscribe button for the honest version. Now let us walk through it. The face from Melbourne is where this investigation has to start, because every rumor needs a photograph, and this one had a perfect one. Before we name her, you need to understand the size of the hole Carlos Alcaraz left behind, because the rumor only exists because of that hole. Rewind to December 2025. Carlos made the boldest call of his career and parted ways with Juan Carlos Ferrero, the coach who built him from a kid in El Palmar into a Grand Slam machine. Half the tennis world called it madness. The other half waited for proof. Proof arrived in Melbourne, and it arrived loudly. Carlos tore through the Australian Open without dropping a set until the semifinals, then survived Alexander Zverev in a 5-hour, 27-minute war that became the longest semifinal in the tournament's history. 2 days later, he took down Novak Djokovic in the final, on the court where Novak almost never loses, and lifted the one major trophy missing from his shelf. At 22 years and 272 days old, he became the youngest man ever to complete the career Grand Slam, erasing a record that had stood since 1938. The crowd was proposing marriage to him mid-match. 3 proposals in 10 seconds during the Tommy Paul match, all caught on camera, all over your timeline within the hour. He was the most eligible bachelor in sport, the World Sportsman of the Year, and the undisputed face of tennis. Now look closer at that Laureus ceremony in Madrid on April 20th, because the whole story hides in one small detail. He accepted the biggest individual honor in world sport wearing a small cast on his right wrist, a king being crowned and cracking apart inside the very same frame. 6 days earlier, during a first-round win over Otto Virtanen in Barcelona, something gave way in that wrist. The diagnosis came back as tenosynovitis, an inflammation of the sheath that protects the tendons, and within 24 hours he had withdrawn from the tournament. Then the dominoes fell in slow, brutal order. Madrid, his home crowd, gone. Rome, gone. Roland Garros, where he was the 2-time defending champion, gone. Queens, gone. And finally, on May 19th, the announcement fans had been dreading. Wimbledon, gone too, taken away in a short and polite Instagram statement that told everyone almost nothing. While one king vanished, the other one moved into the palace. Jannik Sinner had already ripped the number 1 ranking out of Carlos's hands by beating him in the Monte Carlo final on April 12th, the last completed tournament of Carlos's season. Now Jannik walks the lawns of SW19 as defending champion with his greatest rival watching from a sofa 1,000 miles away. Zverev picked the empty house clean as well, capitalizing on the absence in Paris to grab his first major, and he is currently hunting the number 2 ranking. Carlos can no longer defend, since those 1,300 finalist points from last year's Wimbledon are evaporating as we speak. One rival cruising through week 1, another rival closing in on his ranking. The man himself, invisible for 79 days. That invisibility is the soil this rumor grew in. Because here is the thing about superstars. Fans will not accept an empty seat. When his June 17th collage appeared on Instagram, showing a concert, good food, and glimpses of a life that looked suspiciously enjoyable for a man in medical exile, the internet did what the internet always does. It went hunting for a woman. Suspect number 1 arrived with a famous name attached. Brooks Nader, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, had been linked to Carlos since the US Open, when her own sister told E! News that the rumors were true and that dating is a loose term. Sounds damning, right? Except the whole thing collapsed under the lightest touch. The story turned out to be a publicity push tied to her new reality show, and by March 2026, Nader herself confirmed she was single. Door number 1 closed, and honestly, it was never really open. Suspect number 2 hits closer to home, literally, because she lives in London. Emma Raducanu and Carlos set the internet on fire at Queen's in 2025, playing mixed doubles with the kind of chemistry that launches 1,000 edits. Fans shipped them relentlessly. Both of them laughed it off, and Emma told the BBC directly that she was glad the internet was having fun, but the relationship was purely platonic. Fast forward to this week, and the theory falls apart even harder, because Emma has her own nightmare unfolding. Hours after a positive update on her leg, a final scan revealed a stress fracture, and Britain's number 1 pulled out of her home Grand Slam on the eve of her first-round match. She is not strolling anywhere with anyone. She is heartbroken and in rehab, same as him. Doctor number 2 closed, which leaves the third face, the one from his player's box in Melbourne, the one photographed on a red carpet in Leicester Square this spring, walking around London exactly like the title promised. Her name is Peggy Gou, and unlike the first 2 suspects, her history with Carlos is completely real. So let us check the alibi properly, because this is where lazy channels stop and we do not. Peggy Gou is a 34-year-old South Korean DJ and one of the biggest names in global dance music. The connection started in late 2025 when she and Carlos were spotted having dinner together in Seoul before his exhibition against Sinner. Then came January, and the moment that lit the fuse, cameras found her sitting in his box during the Australian Open quarterfinal against Alex de Minaur, and within hours she was leaving supportive comments under his posts. The tennis world exploded. A global music star in the sacred family box of the world's most eligible athlete is not a small thing. And yes, on April 22nd, she was photographed at the Devil Wears Prada 2 premiere in Leicester Square in London, weeks before Wimbledon began. Every single ingredient of the title exists in the real world. A mystery woman. Walking around London, a documented history with Carlos Alcaraz. Now watch what happens when you actually connect the dots instead of just drawing them. Peggy Gou was in London for a movie premiere, on her own invitation, living her own enormous career. She performs at festivals and premieres across Europe constantly, and London is one of her home stages. Carlos was nowhere near Leicester Square that night. Photographers caught him exactly where his team said he was, in Madrid, celebrating in the stands while his little brother Jaime competed in a junior event at La Caja Magica. A proud big brother in Spain and a DJ at a film premiere in England 700 miles apart, welded together by fan accounts into a secret London romance. Both of them addressed the connection months ago on the record. Carlos called her a friend and praised her support. Peggy explained they simply enjoy sharing meals together, calling food her love language. Nobody bothered to check the alibi because the alibi kills the story. So the mystery woman door closes and a much better question opens. If there was no secret romance, what exactly was his team so desperately trying to hide? Because the silence was real. The vagueness was real. And this is the reveal the tabloids never gave you. They were hiding the wrist. Understand what tenosynovitis means for this specific player. According to reporting from the New York Times, Carlos has been wearing a splint, and wrist injuries sit among the most feared diagnoses in tennis, the kind that ended Juan Martín del Potro's prime. The cruelest part is the cause. That violent, whipping topspin forehand, the shot that made him a champion, generates forces so extreme that it inflamed the sheath around his own tendons. His greatest weapon turned on him. His team went quiet because every update becomes a headline. Every headline becomes pressure, and pressure is exactly what rushes a young athlete back too early. The secrecy was never a cover-up. It was a shield. Look back at McEnroe through that lens and his so-called meltdown becomes something else entirely. When Johnny Mac went nuclear on the Off-Court podcast with Greg Rusetsky, the words he actually used were depressed and bummed out. He called Carlos the best representative the sport has right now, and said everyone in tennis is basically praying for his return. That is not an attack, that is a three-time Wimbledon champion grieving on air because he understands better than anyone what an absent superstar costs this game. Even Sinner, the man profiting most from the empty draw, said it plainly in May, "Tennis needs Carlos, and the sport is a much better place when he is around. When your fiercest rival publicly aches for your comeback, you have transcended rivalry." Then came June 28th, the night before Wimbledon started, and the single post that changed the temperature of everything. Carlos uploaded a video of himself gently hitting forehands, his first real ball striking since April, and captioned it with nothing except the holding back tears emoji. Within hours, the likes rolled in from Boris Becker, Zverev, Berrettini, Dimitrov, and Wawrinka. One fan comment rose above thousands of others and became its own headline. "My emotional stability depends on that wrist." Read that again. Grown adults, strangers across the planet, confessing that their happiness is tied to the health of one 23-year-old's tendon sheath. That is the actual story the mystery woman rumor was feeding off. The sport is not missing its world number 2. It is missing its joy. Joy has always been the core of this man. Other champions run on obsession or rage or revenge, but Carlos plays like the court is his backyard and the crowd came over for dinner. He told Vanity Fair in March that there were times he refused to take a break and it led to bad tennis or injury, and in his own words, it did not end well. The kid learned his lesson in the hardest classroom possible. In April, he said the quiet part out loud, reminding everyone he has a very long career ahead of him with many years still to come. Sit with that maturity for a second. A 23-year-old holding the keys to every tournament on earth chose patience over applause, knowing the internet would fill his silence with fiction. They invented a girlfriend because the truth, a young man quietly protecting his own future, does not sell panic. And the comeback map is already drawn. His camp is targeting the North American hard-court swing, with the Canada and Cincinnati Masters as launch pads and the US Open, starting August 31st as the ultimate objective, the very tournament where he is defending champion. Picture that first night in New York, Sinner waiting at number 1 with whatever he collects in London, Zverev breathing down the rankings, Carlos walking back under the lights with a healed wrist, a career Grand Slam in his pocket, and 4 months of stolen joy demanding repayment. The rivalry this sport was built around does not resume quietly. Fabricated romance stories will look like background noise the moment that forehand fires at full speed again. So here is where the file closes. The mystery woman was real. The London photos were real, the history was real, and the story stitched from them was pure invention. A fantasy manufactured because millions of people could not cope with an empty chair at Wimbledon. His team hid nothing except a young man's fragile healing from a world that refuses to let him heal in peace. Honestly, that says more about us than about him. If this breakdown gave you the truth, the thumbnails never will. Do me one favor and hit that subscribe button right now because we investigate the noise so you get the signal. Drop your prediction for his US Open return in the comments. Tell me if you ever believe the London rumor, and turn on the bell, because when Carlos Alcaraz walks back onto a court, you want to be here for that video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.